In his proposed 2013 budget, President Jonathan allocated the highest portion of state funds to the education sector. A whopping 426 billion naira was poured into the sector to empower young minds. State governments have also prioritized education, and Rivers State is no exception. Since taking office in 2007, Governor Amaechi has not relented on his promise to provide equal opportunities to all Rivers children. After a thorough inspection of the state's schools, it became evident that there was much to be done. Various institutions were overhauled, those which could not be fixed were shut down. Such is the priority on education. Governor Amaechi wants a law that will make it a criminal offense for parents or guardians not to send their children to school. Guilty parties could face a jail sentence. Primary schools will be vetted by a quality assurance committee to ensure they too meet the required standard of quality education.
Even though the Constitution of the Federal Republic of Nigeria places education, in the charge of the local government councils, it became necessary to meet with them and be honest, and deal with the matter frankly. The local government councils do not have the capacity, both by funding, but also by funding, but also by the human capital they have to address the matter of primary education the way it should be addressed. And so you've got a governor who says, how do we leave such a critical area of our lives in the hands of the tier of government that is least competent to address it? And I say this is because of a matter of funding and capacity. And so he had to meet with the local government chairman, who agreed that the state could take it on, especially because that was done without the state reducing their funds. So whereas the state government is taking on the issues of primary education and paying the teachers and building the infrastructure and providing all that the children need, the state government is not depleting the local government funds, is not taking any money. So indeed, what you then find is 2 billion naira monthly goes back to the local government councils because they're not having to pay the salaries of teachers. And before now, you found a situation where you would always hear that primary school teachers were on strike because local government councils were not able to meet their obligations to the teachers because funding was not available. So, that was the first thing he did.
When His Excellency came on board in 2008, the educational sector was in comatose, and he set up a committee headed by some lady who worked with the World Bank. They did an assessment about what was on ground. From there, he declared a state of emergency. I'm sure, as you know, the governor of the state, before he became a governor, was a prepared governor, so he knew what he wanted. The design of the school, he knew what he wanted. He knew what the primary school should look like. He knew what the secondary school would look like. Since he's been somebody who is well traveled, I think the model primary school, he picked some idea from Australia, as he said, some from Ghana, and some from his son's public school. So he came up with that concept and declared a state of emergency and started headlong building new infrastructures. Because what we met on ground, I'm sure, is something which everybody knows about. Children were sitting on bare on floor. There was no roof over their head. If it's raining, we had teachers who were not retrained. They've been in the system for so long that even to teach, they don't even know what they're teaching. So we embarked on a massive infrastructure development and teacher training at the same time, because he was of the view that for the educational sector to move forward, we must multitask. So whilst the infrastructure was going on, we were training our teachers. And from there, from 2009, we got just 4 model primary school completed. But as we speak now, we have 270 model primary school. And by September, or before September, we have over 15 or 18 of those model secondary schools that will be completed, making it 300, because his vision is 750, but 500 has been awarded out. And the design of the school couldn't carry the capacity. we had 390, which is the 14 classroom block. And when an assessment was done, we found out that the 390 classroom block couldn't carry the children we had, particularly in Port Harcourt and Obiakpo. So a new design is, we had to do a new design, and now we have 20 classroom blocks that can carry 600 pupils in a building, and that is ongoing. We're building quite a number of that in Port Harcourt and Obiakpo because the population level is very high. And bear in mind, with the figures we got, with 10.5 million Nigerian children out of school, no state will want to have children out of school. Now, if you go, like in Rivers State, it's so difficult to find any child hawking on the street. When he came on board, we had quite a lot of children on streets. No children were not interested in going to school. The building alone, you can see that quite a number of those schools are functional. As I speak, we have 100 of those model primary schools functional, and 250 will be given out to 250 communities in September. The model secondary school, we have one functional, an additional 4 will be functional this year. Then another 2 early in the year. So generally, I think the educational sector, you can't say whether you've done well or not, because it's a system where, you know, every single one of us knew what we met on ground. But the little the governor has done in the educational sector, I think we should give him kudos. He's done quite well in that sector. Now 13,000 teachers are being recruited. As this interview is going on, people are beginning to pick up their employment letters. Before we decided that, an assessment was done. He asked us to go around and find out the number of teachers we wanted in the system. So we approved 13,000 teachers. That will increase the salary budget in the state to nearly 900 million naira alone for the new teachers we're going to recruit, because he believed in a system where infrastructure is not education, you know, and he felt that we must recruit and train our teachers. These 13,000 teachers, we go on training for 6 months, then we put them in a classroom for teaching.
We are building a new university, because when you've given them great education at primary and secondary level, granted they won't all go to university in Port Harcourt, you also want to have a situation where you kind of have a college town setup, where you have, because there's a sense in which if you have a vibrant academic community, it affects development. And it affects businesses, because research can go on and businesses can find new ways that they can grow because they're relating with the university communities. So we're working on having a world-class university. The Rivers State University of Science and Technology was the first University of Science and Technology in the country. Again, things deteriorated, but we're trying to build that back up. We're going to be moving them to a new campus with all of the facilities they need. But that's just one leg. We've got to also deal with the matter of who is there to teach. So, again, the issues of capacity and human capital is also being addressed at the university level. A good thing to see is that there's been movement upwards. The University of Science and Technology used to be very poorly rated, you know, when the deterioration set in. And this is going from one of the best institutions in the country to one of the worst. But now we're going back up. There was a time when the law school there was the best in the country. There was a time when the management sciences, they had one of the best. The environmental sciences department used to be really great. And then things went back. But, you know, the current administration is trying to build that back up. So you've seen them moving from 70-something position to 19. And I think that, you know, there's going to be continuous progress forward. So that's with regards to education. We're focusing on vocational training. Again, because of the issues of how do you deal with middle sector manpower, especially in places like Rivers State has, of course, a strong oil and gas sector. And that sector continues to complain about the gap in finding middle-level manpower that is skilled middle-level manpower. So we're focusing on the issue of vocational training. And we've got some partnerships with the Germans and with an Israeli firm that's coming in to train middle-level manpower.
The River State government says it's working to meet its commitments in good time. But how do the beneficiaries of these changes feel? We took to the streets of Port Harcourt to hear from them.
The youth leaders who they promised 20% job during his administration will never be seen till today.
Our roads are okay now. Even the ones that are bad, we have tried in terms of rehabilitation.
We can see that River State has changed more than as it is before. Things have been in order.
I'm impressed with what the governor is doing, and I believe I can take him by his word that he's a governor of integrity, that he will tell you that he's going to do something and he can stand by it.
Every year we send outside this country 300 Rivers children to learn in some of the best institutions in the world. Then you know that you are growing a new crop, a new generation of professionals who will take over the state and do tremendous things with them. And I think that that investment in the people is really what is going to count for Governor Amaechi down the line. I don't think it's going to be brick and mortar, because they will be there. Brick and mortar will be there. They would always be there. People would always build roads. They would always build schools. But that's not what's going to drive development, though. It's the people. Because what will sustain the work you've done is how much you've invested in the people and how you've changed orientation and how you've created a crop of leaders who can take it from where you stopped. I think that's going to be the legacy that he can look back to, and he can, you know, beat his chest and say, I did something.